Namaste, kia ora, and good day, friends. This is Yugal Parashar, editor of the Indian News. Friends, today we have with us Melissa Lee, the national MP, 5 terms list MP from Mount Albert electorate. Welcome to the Indian News, Melissa, and how are you this morning?
I'm really well. Namaste. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a great time to be here to actually meet all of your readers and your viewers.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you.
To have you in our office.
Thank you. And it's spacious.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for that. Now, Melissa, since it's the first time you are talking to the Indian News, for the benefit of our audience and the readers and the viewers, would you want us to tell a little bit about yourself, who Melissa Lee is, and how has been your journey so far?
Well, Melissa Lee, I guess some people know me, most people probably won't. I began my life in Korea. I was born in Korea. My parents decided that around the time when I turned 10 years old, that they wanted to give us, my brother and I, an overseas experience. So my father had a government contract in Malaysia, so I was uprooted from Korea and we moved to Malaysia. And that was actually quite shocking because I spoke no Malay, no English, no Chinese, no other language, and I only spoke Korean. And so, cut the long story short, from Malaysia, I did my primary, secondary, and then I got to an age where I had to matriculate to get to university, and my parents looked around different parts. And I ended up in Australia where I finished my high school and went to university. By that stage, my parents had decided to come and check out Australia, and then they hated it. I don't know why. And then they came to visit some friends in New Zealand and absolutely fell in love with New Zealand. And typical Asian family, mum and dad decide, and my brother and I had to move to New Zealand. No choice at all. And so we moved here, now 1988 we actually moved here. So it's been 33 years. Yeah,
that's great. Now, Melissa, what made you to move to politics and that to choose National Party for your political career?
I think, I'm a Korean woman and my parents are fairly conservative. And Korea is divided into two, North Korea, communist North Korea, and South Korea, which is a republic, and a democracy. And I think, if I went with any other party, my father probably would have shot me. But having said that, I think my interest in politics began very, very young. In primary school, in grade 1, I remember campaigning to become class president. And so, the teacher asked, asked to sort of put your hand up if you want to, become a class president, and I campaigned and I became a class president. But the interesting thing is that when the teacher actually asked the class, what do you want to be when you grow up? Most of my friends actually said things like, they wanted to be policeman, they wanted to be teacher, they wanted to be doctor. I was the shortest kid in class, and in my class there were 65 children back then, and I was the shortest kid, and I was the class president, and I stood up and really loud voice, and I had forgotten this, apparently I said this, I want to be the first female president of South Korea. I was that specific. Because there were no female presidents ever in Korea. And the boys actually said, girls can't be president, girls. And so I ended up...
That is hilarious.
I ended up getting into a fist fight with my, boys in my class.
Oh, sure. Now, coming to politics, Melissa, do you think your party has finally come over the leadership issue?
I think all parties actually go through different stages where they do actually struggle. And I think, when you have a group of MPs who are, A-plus personalities, everybody come into politics not actually saying, I want to be the backbencher for the rest of my life. I think everybody's actually determined to actually, rise through the ranks, become a minister, potentially prime minister. I have no desire to be prime minister, but, and I think, everybody thinks that they can give their very best to actually lead the party as well. And I think we had our, structural issues within our own caucus. Also within the party. And I think, often what happens is that when you lose an election, everybody, gets quite uptight. And I think, there has been some changes. And I think finally, I think hopefully that it's all settled down. And we have a great leader in Christopher Luxon. And I think, I have had him speak at one of my events even before the election. And he's inspirational, amazing speaker.
Great. Now, do you see at some point of time yourself in that position?
No, I have no desire to be Prime Minister or leader of the National Party.
Sure. Now, Melissa, we all know we have been through really tough times in past 2 years. How do you see the performance of the Labour government, especially in dealing with the corona crisis in New Zealand?
I think initially the government, as a government it doesn't matter what party, I think when a government is faced with a pandemic that is actually hitting globally, I think you have to determine what is the best way forward to protect your people. People of New Zealand needed to be protected, and I think the government was right in their decisions to limit entry to New Zealand, block New Zealand off from the rest of the world in terms of visitors. But I think if I can criticize the government, I feel that they were slow, not only in their decision making, but slow in thinking forward as to planning forward and deciding what is best for New Zealand going forward now that they've actually locked the country down. And what I mean is, for example, they knew Delta was spreading right through around the world. They should have anticipated that Delta was eventually going to come to us because we had New Zealanders who were coming in from overseas who were exposed to Delta and they were potentially going to bring it into the country. They didn't anticipate that. They didn't anticipate, how fast it could actually spread. And I think we were very slow in ordering the vaccine and rolling out the vaccine. Hey, we had very, very low rates.
You mean they could have been more proactive?
Oh, I think so, definitely. They should have been proactive and actually thinking and making plans for future. At the moment, in terms of the mandate, we've got a protest in Parliament where people are actually, saying stop the mandate, cancel the mandate, let all of us get free. The thing is, it's like, I agree with part of that. The reason why they're frustrated is...
That was going to be my next question to you. So what's your take about these anti-mandate protesters?
I think, the protest itself is actually a mixed bag. And I think there are a lot of people who are genuinely concerned about the mandates, and I feel for them. But the thing is that, National Party is made with the values of law and order as well. And when you have people who are in there hurting other people, neighbours who have actually complained about, these protesters ripping their masks off and spitting and throwing things at them, unsavoury things, like human feces, and urinating around the places. And I think that is just really unsavoury. And I think when they're threatening people, I don't think you can actually negotiate with people who are threatening you. And I don't think that is right.
So how do you see the end of this protest? Because it's 15th day today, and we don't see any end of this protest in near future, because government is firm on their stand. In fact, the former Prime Minister Jim Bolger just suggested yesterday to the politician to come off their high horses, while Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson has to say that the protesters have done their bit, they have put their point, they should go back now. So where do you see the end of this protest?
I think what I was actually trying to say is that the people who are frustrated and who are, demonstrating and actually camped outside Parliament and, being a menace to the next, the neighbourhood, I think are wanting an end as well. They actually want a pathway out of the mandate. Some people, I've heard some stories where, because of mandates, people have lost jobs, and I feel for them, and people actually feel that their freedoms have been impinged on. And I understand where they're actually coming from, and I am very open to hearing their stories, and I have heard some of those stories. The issue is the government has to decide and give people an understanding as to where the mandate will stop, when the mandate will stop, how it's going to actually progress from here, that where we are currently. But in terms of the actual protest, it is actually a police issue, and how the police will actually deal with it, I'm not so sure. I think I saw an interview with the head of police, the police commissioner, and I think, as he said, he really doesn't want to use a lot of violence because New Zealanders don't want violence used on protesters. But the issue is that now protesters are throwing things at the police, spitting at the police, throwing,
Somebody even drove the car into police.
Exactly. I think
Yeah.
when you have that, I think the police needs to take action, and I think they need to do it promptly.
So, what will be your message to those protesters or even the anti-vaxxers?
I think I believe in their choice. It is their choice, but they should not try and impose their belief on other people by ripping other people's face masks off. And just like I respect their right, I hope that they respect my right, that it is my choice to be vaccinated. And the thing is that the government has a mandate for specific jobs and specific work where it's actually required to have a vaccination. And until the government decide that the mandate is actually no longer required, those mandates actually stay.
Melissa, what is your and your party's take on those frequent happening lockdowns and increasing of minimum wage and all that is literally killing the businesses in New Zealand? So, what do you think you could have done differently, or your party could have done differently if they were at the helm of the affairs? Because the business class or the industries in New Zealand, they are very, very frustrated with the situation here. What would you want to tell them that you could do better, or the government could have done in a different way?
I think obviously that specific question I think is for the finance spokesperson and the leadership, but I will endeavor to actually answer that.
Yeah.
I think my view about the minimum wage is that when we were in government, we also raised the minimum wage, because I think you need to protect the lowest earning capacity people. Having said that, when you have a situation where the economy has actually tanked and we've got inflation that is actually massive, 5.9%, and our cost of living has actually gone up, and petrol prices, more than $3 to a liter to
It's almost
fill
doubled in the last couple of years.
Exactly. And when you actually have that, you need to sort of look at how the settings are for the government. How do we actually fix it so that the costs are lowered? So that even when you raise the minimum wage, it may not make a huge difference for them. They're still going to be struggling, and they're still going to be dependent on support from the government. And, I think you've got to get to a point, and as you actually point out, businesses will actually suffer. And because they're struggling at the moment, particularly, when you look at Christmas and January for hospitality businesses, it is the lowest time when all of Auckland decide that they actually want to go away for a holiday or whatever, because they've been in lockdown, they want to get away from Auckland. But the thing is that they've had a really low business. Even when you walk into a cafe, there are many, many, many empty seats. Their intake is very, very low. If that is the case, their ongoing business future is actually questionable and doubtful. And there are a lot of people. I saw a video, interviews with hospitality and business owners, cafe owners and restaurant owners, and it broke my heart, because, they have poured their heart and soul into it, and often their life saving into a business. And
things are not looking good.
They're facing, closure. They're, facing bankruptcy. They're facing losing everything that they've ever worked for, and that is really heartbreaking. And for me, and a lot of them don't want to actually hurt their employees either. They are the, bread and butter of their business as well, because they make or break their business. Having good staff is actually what they need, and they don't want to let go. But eventually what's going to happen is that if you increase minimum wage and the cost for the business is going to increase, there'll be more people who will be unemployed as a result.
Sure. Now, Melissa, you represent an electorate which has got range of ethnicity, but I would want a specific experience, your experience with the people from Indian community in last, almost 15 years or so of your being MP in the Mount Albert electorate.
Actually, I don't technically represent Mount Albert, because the Prime Minister is the MP for Mount Albert. I'm the list MP who looks after Mount Albert for the National Party.
That's right.
My relationship with the Indian community goes beyond my political career. Although in recent years with COVID, I haven't actually been to many Indian events, and because we've had two Indian MPs who represented us very well, often I wasn't invited to some of those events because they had two Indian MPs from the National Party. But my history goes back well before, to back in 1994 when I started presenting a television show called Asia Down Under. Yeah. And I ended up producing and owning the company that actually ran that program. And, we did a lot of stories about the settlement of New Zealand by Indian community, the historical context, as well as the issues that is actually faced in, different generations, the issues of cross-cultural marriages, issue of arranged marriages, issue of maintaining the language within our Indian community, how difficult it is, and how much effort they put in, and the beautiful saris and dresses that they actually wear.
All the colors.
All the colors. It's so beautiful. And also at festivals. And I remember turning up to Mahatma Gandhi Center for Navratri, and is that the one where they dance for?
I have seen you wearing Indian saris and the salwar suits and all that. You don those dresses and you carry it really very well.
And having to do the stick.
That's dandiya.
Dandiya Ras, that's right. And I remember girlfriends having to teach me how to do the Dandiya Ras, and that was amazing. I was really good fun.
Great. Now, Melissa, to wind up our conversation, how do you perceive that national parties, future and by the 2023 elections? You think you are ready to come back to the power?
I certainly am, and I hope that the people feel confident to vote for us, to elect us as the next government in 2023. And I think, in 2020, a lot of people were quite concerned, and we lost a lot of voters because of the internal issues that we had in terms of leadership changes and, the leaks that actually happened within our own party. All parties have issues, and I think we have actually dealt with it, and we are hopefully proving to our voters and the wider New Zealand community that we are ready to govern, that we are the alternate government in waiting. And I hope that people actually recognize that and hopefully vote for us.
Sure. Sounds good. Good luck for that.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our today's discussion and conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And thanks once again for visiting the Indian News office. Well, friends, this was Melissa Lee for you. So we are signing up for the Indian News for now. Thank you.